Hello, and welcome to Twisted Britain, a podcast on true crime in Britain with a sprinkling of weird and the macabre. Your hosts are
me, Bob Dale,
and me, Nadine Royal,
and me, Kate Much. Bob and Nadine are a couple of friends who met in the pub and developed a friendship based on a mutual love of booze, podcasts, and pub quizzes. They met in the Settle Inn in Stirling, and that's where they record. Each week, they both tell a story of something twisted, one long one and one short one, and they decide who goes first based on the flip of a coin.
That was better than
perfect.
Any of us would have ever done it. Thank you very much, Kate.
Okay. I had to make a little switch there because once I introduced myself, they didn't sound right.
Well, you did amazingly.
That was great. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And also, thank you very much for being our first international host.
Yeah, for those of you that haven't realised, our guest tonight has a slight accent.
Apparently we have accents, but I can't hear it. So. So Kate is one of our wonderful Patreons. Thank you very much for that, Kate. And she has...
My pleasure.
Yeah, you've done us the very kind honour of joining us for this week's recording.
It's kind of exciting.
Yeah, it's one of the... I would say that the only time I ever get nervous about recording anymore is when we've got somebody else on. Because, we want you to sound as good as well, not as good as us, better than us. So, yeah, thanks very much for joining us. Obviously, you're a fan of Twisted Britain. But what kind of other podcasts do you listen to?
Well, I listen to mostly true crime podcasts. A couple of my favorites are True Crime Sweden and Mensrea and True Crime Finland. And I think it was one of them that recommended Twisted Britain, and then I discovered that one and have been hooked ever since.
Sinead that does Mensrea is an absolute superstar.
Yeah, she's so good.
Yes.
Yeah, she is.
Absolutely
killing it in the true crime charts at the moment as well, which is just, we hope to meet her one day, hopefully next year at a conference that we're going to, so that'll be cool. I presume you've never been on a podcast before, or have you?
I have not. I did do the intro to one of Sinead's shows.
Oh, cool.
Several months ago. And helped her with some of the research there.
Oh, cool.
So you're a serial introist.
Yeah. Yes.
And are you going to stick about with us while we rattle through a couple of our normal ramblings?
I would love to.
Well, cool. Just feel free to join in with us anytime you want.
Alrighty.
We're happy for everybody's opinions as we go.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah, just crack in.
Okay.
So, how are you? Wait, I always get this wrong when there's three of us. How are you, Nadine?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you, Bob?
I'm alright, yeah. I don't think we've done any. Don't think I've done anything at all since I saw you last.
I don't know if I have really either.
I bought some carpets.
But that's wild.
I mean, I wish I hadn't said that out loud, but there we are.
I've just been working, to be honest.
Well, that's rubbish. Kate, are you having a better life than us this week?
Well, I just started. I had yesterday off because it was a holiday here in the States, and so today's my Monday.
Ah, nice. So a nice long weekend for you.
Yes.
We had one last weekend, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, you say we. I don't get bank holidays, so
no.
You had it.
Get a different job. How's your research gone?
Yeah, all right, actually, thank you. I tried to do one, as I always do. I try and do something that in some way relates to our guest. So Kate works in a library, isn't that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So I tried to find a story that is in some way affiliated with a library.
Ooh.
And at first it took a long time to get any kind of hit on you crime library, because it just kept trying to point me
murdered by a library, no?
It kept trying to point me in the direction of, here's a library with true crime books in it. And I was like, no, I need a crime that happened in a library. But I've kind of got one. It's a bit of a tangent, but it will count.
Okay, cool. Well, I went a bit more vague than that, and I have an American man who was tried in
I knew you were going to do that, so I strayed away from that. I knew you'd do that.
I'm that predictable these days. That's fine, isn't it?
Shall we?
Yeah, let's. Kate, will you do us the honour of calling heads or tails for me?
All right.
And you have to say...
Tail.
Sorry, you have
Bob goes first.
No, there we go.
Oh, it's heads.
Tails, Bob goes first.
It's heads. Nadine, you're up.
Right, here we go.
Ooh.
I get to drink. Yeah.
So, I doubt this is a story that you'll have heard of, Kate, but I think, Bob, you might have.
Okay.
Because it's a murder that happened in England, and like I said, it slightly involves a library, but it was one of the country's most high-profile cases like that there's ever been.
All right, okay.
And it's because it is the murder of a 10-year-old boy called Damilola Taylor, who was murdered on the 27th of November back in 2000.
So a historical case for you.
Two brothers were convicted of manslaughter after several young boys were cleared of the murder of Damilola. But because he was such a young boy and his death was such a tragedy, it really did hit our nation quite hard. And as I'll discuss, the eventual conviction of these two boys took several years, so it's like a case that lingered around in our country for such a long time, and it really did devastate our nation, really.
Yeah, okay.
So Damilola Taylor was born in Lagos, Nigeria, to Richard and Gloria Taylor. He attended Wisdom Montessori School before he travelled to the UK in the August of 2000 with his family to allow his sister to seek treatment for epilepsy.
So he moved in August 2000, and when was his murder?
27th of November 2000.
Oh, shit. Right,
yeah.
Okay.
So on that day, Taylor set off from Peckham Library.
Peckham Library?
That's the only library.
That was as good as you got, was it? Right, okay.
So he set off from Peckham Library at around 10 to 5 in the evening, to make his way home, which we know because he was captured on CCTV doing so. In one article I read, there was a quote that described him walking home from the library as almost skipping away down the road, as a young child would, full of youth and innocence. It was on his walk home that Damilola received a gash to his left thigh, which severed an artery. He staggered into a nearby stairwell and collapsed, where he bled to near death in the space of around 30 minutes. He was still alive, though, when an ambulance took him to hospital, but he did die from his injury. Well,
you've painted a really horrible scene there.
Yeah. 10-year-old, it's horrible. So different forensic scientists have presented different events that could have given Taylor his fatal wounds, but the theory that was accepted by the Metropolitan Police is that he was attacked and then fell onto a broken bottle, which then led him to bleed to death.
Oh, God. That's a horrible series of events, isn't it?
So the gash wasn't intended, it's thought, by his attackers. It was circumstantial that he fell into broken glass, but he was attacked. Damilola died 10 days before his 11th birthday. Which makes it...
Can you stop making this worse and worse?
Yeah, sorry. So, the first trial that happened was in 2002, so 2 years after his death, where 4 youths went on trial at the Old Bailey for the murder. The trial led to all 4 suspects being acquitted, though. 2 were acquitted after the judge ruled that the prosecution's key witness, a 14-year-old girl, was unreliable, and the jury found the other 2 not guilty. As well as questioning the reliability of the young witness, the defence presented evidence suggesting that Taylor's wounds were consistent with his falling on a broken bottle and that he'd not been the victim of an attack.
That's a really tricky scenario to kind of run through in your mind. They're 14-year-old, they're very, very young, and the unreliability of it is almost a unneeded statement, because you can't. I remember what I was like when I was 14. I was lying out my arsehole, but the fact that it was not a deliberate act as well makes it even worse.
Well, yeah. So they were tried for murder, and the fact that the evidence kind of presented showed that it would be manslaughter meant that they couldn't be found guilty of murder,
Right, okay, yeah.
And then, the 2 of them, they were relying on, this witness testimony, and it was found to be unreliable. So the 4 of them were acquitted. But then new evidence came to light. Police vowed to keep the investigation open as well, so they kept on working on it. And new DNA techniques identified Damilola's blood on the trainers of another boy, not one of the first 4 that were tried, who was called Daniel Preddy, and on the sweatshirt cuff of his older brother Richard, who were both members of the Young Peckham Boys gang. Also, though, like, neither of them were named at the time because they were both minors, so they weren't named then, but it was Daniel and Richard Preddy who were tried.
Well, there's been a couple of those recently in British crime. I don't know what it's like in America, Kate, but the identities of juveniles are obviously kept until a judge makes or a court makes a call to say it's in the public's interest to release this.
Yeah.
And
it's quite like that here.
Yeah, there was one recently on Butte, which is an island near here.
That was awful.
That was a horrible case that we may cover in the future, but not now.
Not now. So this led to a re-examination of the evidence obtained at the time of Damilola's death. And in 2005, 5 years after his death, fresh arrests were made. And this time it was on the charges of manslaughter. So the arrested were Hassan Jihad, who was 19, and the two Preddy brothers, who were 16 and 17, but they couldn't be named at the time because of their age.
Yep.
So the second trial happened on the 23rd of January 2006, so we're now 6 years after his death. Jihad, who is now 21 years old, and the two brothers, now 17 and 18, appeared at the Old Bailey to face charges of manslaughter and assault before the start of the imminent trial. The trial commenced on the 24th of January, and in the trial, Alistair Wilson, who was an associate clinical director at the Royal London Hospital and one of Britain's top trauma experts, testified that he thought that Damilola had died after falling on a shard of glass. On the 29th of March, the jury retired to consider its verdict, and on the 3rd of April, Jihad was cleared by the jury of all charges in relation to Damilola's death. The jury could not reach a verdict on the charges of manslaughter against the two brothers, and so they were set free, but with the possibility of a retrial for these charges. And on the 6th of April, the Crown Prosecution Services announced that the two would be retried.
Okay.
So then the retrial for manslaughter happens, and this happens on the 23rd of June, still 2006. The two brothers, who were now over 18, named Danny and Ricky Preddy, from Peckham, South London.
So they'd have been 12 at the time of the crime.
Is that right? 2006? 18? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Young.
Yeah, super young. Both defendants were very well known to the police, having been involved in multiple robberies and other crimes. And on the 9th of August, still 2006, Ricky Gavin Preddy and Danny Charles Preddy, after a 33-day retrial, were convicted of the manslaughter of Damilola Taylor. During the retrial, it was noted that, while the police did follow procedure collecting evidence, lapses occurred in the prosecution, and that's why it had taken so long to reach a conviction.
Okay.
Later on, in October of the same year, an Old Bailey judge sentenced the Preddy brothers to 8 years in youth custody for manslaughter. Although it was widely reported in the media that the victims' parents were unhappy that the sentences had not been longer, the judge went to some lengths to explain the factors he was forced to take into account. These included the age of the offenders at the time, which, as you said, 12 and 13 they were, and that there was no evidence to suggest that there had been a plan to kill Damilola. In addition, the weapon used had not been carried to the scene of the crime but was found lying on the ground.
Okay. A couple of thoughts there.
Yep.
You say that they were sentenced to 8 years youth custody.
Yeah.
But they were 18 at the time.
17 and 18.
17 and 18. So surely the 18-year-old should have just gone to jail.
Gone to prison. Yeah, I don't know if it's because
of when it happened.
When it happened.
But still, you're an adult at that point.
I don't know if 18 is like that.
The kind of crossing point.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know, actually. I maybe should have looked into that a bit more, because that is a bit odd, actually.
And I said I had a couple of points, but actually it was just that one.
It's just that one.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know, actually. You should look into that.
So a bit odd. Have a wee look in the break.
If anybody knows, get in touch.
Yeah, we'll have a wee Google in the break and see what we can find.
So, sadly, after this point, Damilola's mother passed away in 2008. Scotland Yard said Gloria Taylor, who was 57, suffered a suspected heart attack while walking with her husband in Shooters Hill, southeast London. She was taken to hospital but was pronounced dead soon afterwards. Which is just...
Do we know what happened to his sister?
No, actually.
With
the epilepsy.
They were here for her.
Yeah, that's why they came over, yeah. I know that his father, Richard, was very outspoken.
Okay.
During all these years, and still is. I
would fucking hope so.
Yeah, just like that, the absolute injustice of it all, to be honest. So both brothers were set to be paroled in 2010 after serving half of their sentence. Because 2006 they're sentenced 4 years later.
I think after 33 episodes, I don't need to say that we're disappointed in our judiciary system.
Ricky was released on the 8th of September 2010. He's the older of the two. Subject to probation supervision, and could be recalled to custody if he breached the conditions or if his behaviour indicated that it was no longer safe to allow him to remain in the community.
Right.
Ricky was reported to have told his mother that he was deeply sorry for killing Damilola. Danny, his little brother, was released in 2011, the following year, but Ricky was recalled shortly after in the March because he was seen in Peckham and was associating with gang members, and these were both breaches of his parole conditions. He was released again, though, the following January, and then he was again recalled to prison only 16 days later, in the February, this is 2012 now, after again associating with gang members in Peckham and was again in breach of the terms of his release.
Yep.
So, great.
Oh, he's absolutely a star citizen right here.
Yep. So Ricky Preddy was released again in July 2012. And then, surprise, surprise, was jailed again in December 2013. So this time he lasted like a year and a half.
So
but
the reform here is definitely working then.
Yeah. This time he's jailed for 5 months, and this was following a high-speed chase on a stolen motorbike. Ricky,
sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that.
But it's just, I know. Ricky, who's now, at this point, is 26, attended Hammersmith Magistrates Court, charged with a total of 9 offences, allegedly committed just months after he was released from jail. When attending this trial, he was seen brandishing a homemade sign that read, "Real justice for Damilola Taylor," having spelt Damilola's name wrong and missing one of the L's.
Oh, good.
Yeah, fantastic.
Really nailed that.
Really remorseful.
Yeah.
Prick. So
tells what you really think.
In November 2017, he was jailed again for 6 weeks for driving offences and for an additional 4 weeks for failing to appear at his court hearing. So really an upstanding member of the public here. As far as I could find, I looked into Danny, as far as I could find, no re-offences from his younger brother.
Went straight.
Yeah, I think, as far as I could see. So
he was the younger one, sorry.
Yeah, Danny's the younger one.
So he was the one that was 12 at the time.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So as far as I can see, he served 4.5-ish kind of years and doesn't seem to have re-offended as far as coverage goes. But Ricky is just a total shit. So the murder of Damilola did really shock our nation, and as such there's been quite a lot of references made to the case in popular culture. For example, children's author Beverly Naidoo dedicated her award-winning book The Other Side of Truth, which came out in 2000, the year that Damilola was murdered. The book is about 2 Nigerian child refugees who are aged 10 and 12, so very close to this case, 10-year-old Damilola from Nigeria, and she's got this book. She recalled how when she went to accept the Smarty Silver Award for the book, Naidoo heard the shocking news of Damilola Taylor's death on his way home from Peckham Library, which just so happened to be a relevant area in the novel that she'd written. As a result, she organised an ongoing donation of 10p to the Refugee Council from every single book she sold. This was an award-winning book, so...
Yeah, that's good on her.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, because I'd imagine
that's very touching.
Yeah, really touching.
I think that's good.
That's also books. That counts as library.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Writer Stephen Kellman was nominated for the 2011 Man Booker Prize for his debut novel Pigeon English, which was inspired in part by Damilola's death as well. And then the most famous thing that's really come out of it is that there's a 90-minute dramatisation of the events leading to his death and the Taylor family's search for justice, which was premiered on the BBC in November 2016, and it was entitled Damilola, Our Loved Boy. And the dramatisation, movie, I suppose, went on to win a BAFTA, actually, and is still available to watch. I did look it up. It's not on... I don't think it's on a legal site. I don't think it's legal where you can find it, so I'm not going to publicise it, but it's very easy to...
Let's not go down that road of...
It's very easy to find.
Right, okay, we'll leave it at that then, yeah.
Yeah. A year after their son's death, the Taylors established the Damilola Taylor Trust, which aims at improving the lives of underprivileged young people. When the trust was launched with the support of the footballer Rio Ferdinand, who grew up in Peckham, Gloria Taylor said she wanted it to provide hope and opportunities for Britain's downtrodden and underprivileged youth. Damilola lost his life because of enormous problems in the society, she said. Our son wanted to be a doctor. He was a leader, and we are sure he would have been extraordinary. We would like the trust to heal many of the ills faced by today's youth. So the trust actually offers scholarships for medical students from poor backgrounds, because Damilola had said that that's what he wanted to do when he was older. He wanted to be a doctor. And the trust also set up the Damilola Taylor Centre, which is in Peckham, and it provides sports and community activities for like young youths. So the Damilola Taylor Centre still exists today and is available for use, and the trust is still active, and you can donate to them by going on their site and stuff. So I'll post a link to their site in our social medias once this is out, because I think it's quite an important trust to support, actually. But it's just really, I didn't really like go that much into it, but it seems to be these like the two boys, the Preddies, like these brothers that attacked Damilola, were part of like a young person's gang in Peckham, and it seems to have much been like a gang violence kind of thing. I did wonder if it was racial, but the two boys that committed the offence were both black as well.
Right, okay.
So it doesn't appear to be like obviously racially motivated.
That's what I was going to ask you. What was the... Do we know what the purpose...
What was the motivation? No.
We don't know what the purpose of the attack was.
It just seems to have been kind of random violence towards a younger boy, because like it's this like gang violence, really, even though he wasn't...
It's actually quite terrifying. That isn't that long ago. And actually... I mean, you'd have been what? You'd have been about 10 at that time?
2010?
No, 2000.
Oh, in 2000?
Yeah.
I would have been 6.
You'd have been 6, oh God.
Now I feel old.
I was a bit older than 6. But you would never ever think of somebody of that age walking down...
Just walking home from the library, it's 5 p.m.
It's like the most wholesome place to be walking home from, isn't it?
I know.
That's really horrible.
It's a sad one, and it really did actually like shake Britain somewhat, and I'm pretty sure quite a lot of people, if I mention it to them, and people listening to this will recall it quite well, because it did linger in the news for a long time, and especially with all the different trials that happened over the following years. Like, it took 6 years until there was a proper conviction and like an answer to the crime, you know. Yeah,
because when you said the name, I recognised the name, but I couldn't have told you the details of the case.
Yeah, so, and then there was a lot of press coverage surrounding every trial, so it just really lingered around for such a long time. I
think what sticks with me there is how incredibly unfortunate he was, not only to be probably just in the wrong case at the wrong place at the wrong
100%.
time, but have fallen onto some glass. Something that... The act itself wasn't what killed him.
Yeah, he was I say just attacked, that's all an awful just nothing.
I know what you mean.
But he was attacked, but not so violently that he should have died. But what killed him was, just circumstantial, falling into broken glass. And then he managed to, some reports say that he staggered off, other reports say he ran. So I'm not really sure, but he took himself off to a stairwell to, get away from the attack. The gash in his thigh was so severe that it had severed an artery.
He was 10-year-old and shitting himself.
Yeah, and then he was in the stairwell for 30 minutes until an ambulance came. So I presume, again, I didn't really find many records of the intervening kind of that 30 minutes. I presume somebody found him and phoned an ambulance for him, because I imagine in 2000 a 10-year-old boy probably didn't have a mobile phone to phone an ambulance himself.
Absolutely not, no.
So I presume somebody...
That sounds very painful.
Yeah.
Painful in a lonely way.
It is horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually I think lonely is probably the right word there, Kate, because he'd have...
Been alone probably for the most part.
Absolutely petrified for half an hour lying in the stairwell, and then even on that ride to hospital and stuff like that, that's a terrifying experience for a child, just being in the back of an ambulance.
Yeah. It's horrible. It's a horribly sad one.
It is. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. I just tried to find a library tale, but it was that, or the only other library affiliated stories I could find. 2 actually, there was 2 other ones, both of which involve people one was a man in a library in Liverpool who fell from the top floor inside the library, and the other one was a woman who threw herself from the top of a library in England as well. So none of them were terribly cheerful.
No, well,
no.
I think by the nature of what we do, I don't know if you've grasped what we do yet, Nadine.
I don't know. One time I did porn, and that was quite.
Yeah, porn was.
That
good,
was quite funny.
That was funny. Yeah. At least you could have found.
And I don't know, but the last one was pretty good, if you ask me.
Oh, really?
Don't forget Willie down Cock Lane.
Oh, yeah. You'll and for that one, Kate, you won't have heard that yet.
Yet.
We're recording.
No, that one.
Episode comes out on Friday, so actually I've not finished editing it yet, so that one won't be out. But Nadine gets very rude.
Oh.
There's many innuendos. Yeah, it's not like me at all. To be so crude.
I was going to make a library joke that you could have found somebody called Dewey that was a murderer, but I don't know if that works.
For like the Dewey Decimal System? Is that what you're going for?
That is libraries, isn't it?
Yeah, that's libraries, yeah.
That's libraries, yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I haven't been.
I wish you could see how chuffed Bob's face. He's got like the biggest like Cheshire cat smile on his face because he knew something about libraries.
I nailed it. Do you know the only reason I know that?
So I'm curious about something, though. He did their original time in the juvenile system. When he violated his parole, did they put him back in the juvenile prisons or did they put him in the adult prisons, or do you know?
Oh, that's a really good question, actually. I think he went to prison.
Yeah, I would guess breaking your parole at that age would it constitutes another crime at that point.
Yeah, it's like a breach of your parole. Because I know that the second time he breaches parole is when he then is taken to the magistrates. And that's when he's holding up this horrific handwritten misspelt sign. So he definitely went to prison the second time round. I think the first time round, as well. But yeah, I don't know why he got sentenced to youth offenders like custody. It was
maybe 17 at the beginning of the trial or something.
Maybe, yeah, and then turned 18 during.
Yeah.
I don't know. It must have just been like a cut-off. But you'd think even then it'd be like you're going to go for a year in youth custody and then you'll be 18, so then you'll go and do 7 in prison.
To be honest, I thought that's what happened was you transferred.
I think that's probably what is I think it probably just says 8 years sentence to that because that's all they can sentence you to. And then you go and begin your custodial sentence. And then when you turn 18, they're like, okay, up to the big house.
Well, I set you this challenge while you're having your break.
Yeah.
Is to have a look.
All right.
And we will update you when we come back. How about that?
Yeah, okay. I can do that.
We're going to go and refill my glass. You can buy another can of cola if you want, and take a little break just now. As always, you will hear a promo in our break, and we'll be back in a minute.
A man in Brazil dies from severe burns, maybe from a UFO. In Washington, D.C., Jack the Slasher breaks into a house and barely steals anything, but dumps molasses all over a piano and cuts up curtains and sofas. I'm Andrew Gable, and on Forgotten Darkness, I'll look through old newspapers and other sources to find those lesser-known stories of yesteryear. I look mostly at true crime and unexplained phenomena. So if either of those topics sounds like your sort of thing, check us out. You can find the podcast at forgottendarkness.podbean.com or on most podcast apps.
And that's us back.
Hello.
All three of us back.
Hi, Kate.
Hello there.
So I refilled my pint.
Yeah, I had a cigarette and did some quick Googling. So actually, on further inspection, Ricky Preddy was actually 18 going on 19 in 2006 because he was born in 87. So I don't know. I think it must have just been an error in like what I was reading, and I imagine that Danny was probably sentenced to a youth custodial term, and Ricky, I imagine, was probably most likely sent to prison.
Yeah, because
you can't be. I just like looked. I was on the sentence, like this council sentencing website and stuff, like official websites, and all of them refer to like youth custodial sentences as if you were under the age of 18.
Yeah, and I can't see it being a legacy thing.
No, so I think it's just an error in my research. So apologies.
So do we put is it an NB?
What does NB mean?
I don't know, but I've seen it at the end of text.
NB. Yeah, okay, let's
Nadine got it wrong.
NB.
So yeah, my turn. I get to do the short case this week.
Yeah.
And like I say, I had a look into I did my usual, and I went on to my list of crimes, a list of UK murders on something that rhymes with picky media, and picked one that looked interesting.
Well, that's how I found the murder on Cock Lane.
Well, yeah. Could you stop doing that? That's not okay. And then from there, I ended up finding bits and pieces about it, and it's a really weird case.
I'm excited.
But I shall crack on and tell you it just now.
Go.
So this is a case in the 1920s that was mainly solved due to rigorous investigation on the work, rigorous investigation work on the part of Scotland Yard. It was the murder of an American citizen living in Southampton by the name of Vivian Messiter. Now, I'm going to stop there and say, when I started reading this, I presumed Vivian was a female, but it turns out it's a male name.
I quite like it when men have female names.
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting.
Like Lindsay and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
Lindsay, yeah, that's like the classic one, isn't it?
That's very Scottish male.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it Scottish?
So anyway, Vivian Messiter was a 57-year-old man who was an agent with the Wolf Head Oil Company, working out of a garage in Southampton. So an agent with the company was basically a salesman. He was a quiet man who'd had quite a successful armed forces career during the First World War, becoming a captain of the Fusiliers. However, he had sustained an injury during his time in the war, and it left him with a limp. After his army life, he spent some time working in both North and South America, from what I read, Mexico and all over North America, before returning back to Southampton to work for the Wolf's Head Oil Company. Like I said, his role would have been basically a salesman, so he'd have gone around different garages and farms and all that kind of stuff to say, you need our oil. And I had to look up the logo of the Wolf's Head Company. It's really cool, so I'm definitely going to use that as a...
Is this a wolf's head?
It is a wolf's head, funnily enough. Not an oily one, though. So at this point, we fast forward a bit to January the 10th, 1929. And two men were working in a garage on Grove Street in Southampton, where they discovered a partially decomposed male body hidden in the back of the garage. At first appearance, it looked like he'd been shot in the head, as there was a puncture mark above the left eye. Obviously, the police were sent for, and the local constabulary, which is a word I still can't say, sent for Scotland Yard. When Scotland Yard arrived, they investigated the gruesome scene a bit further and discovered that there's blood splatters up the wall above the height that would have been involved in a gunshot. And a pathologist determined that the actual cause of his death was blunt force trauma. The blunt force trauma was proven around the sides of the head and the front of the head, and no cracks in the top of the skull. So he'd obviously been beaten round the side of the head.
Right.
This trauma was matched up to a murder weapon found within the garage. There was a hair on the hammer found, and this hair was matched to type as one of Vivian's eyebrow hairs.
Wow.
Now, this was obviously before DNA testing and everything like that, so this was matched as type, so they would have found the follicle and that kind of stuff, and realised that it wasn't a hair in the head, but they matched up to the same type.
Well, yeah, you can look down a microscope at hairs and like look at the kind of like patterns on them, I'm sure. And it's quite interesting. Have you ever done it? Looked down a microscope at a hair? It's really cool. I have, actually.
Oh, so like I say, this was matched as type to one of Vivian's eyebrow hairs. The puncture in the front of the skull was deemed to have been from the pointy part of the hammer.
Oh.
Which is a really grim thing to say now that I've written that down, and then I've read it out and gone, oh.
Oh, yeah. Not pleasant.
It was also determined at this point that the body had been in the garage for approximately 2 months.
Wow. God.
Bet
that was a pleasant find.
Well, yeah, one of the reports I read, so I read the kind of newspaper articles from the Times, and I also read one that was released in 1977, so like a good 50 years later. And one of them, which I'll find and post the article to, had said, decomposing and rat-ridden body.
Yay.
Oh.
Which is not a lovely image, but I guess the rats would have started eating him.
Well, they would do, yes.
So, yeah, like I say, from the decomposition of the body, they approximated that it had been 2 months previously that he'd been murdered. And this tied in nicely with the fact that Vivian had been reported missing 9 weeks earlier by the landlord of his lodgings. Despite initial searches of the local area when he had been reported missing, he had not been found. Now, these searches even included checking the garage.
Oh, okay. So he's been moved back there.
Yeah, that would be a really nice way to think of it. But actually what happened was they got to the garage, went, well, it's locked.
Oh, shut up.
So it can't be in there. It's locked from the outside.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So they stopped looking.
Oh, good.
Really?
Good. Good search. Good search there.
10 out of 10 for police work. So they didn't bother checking any further than that.
No, well, you wouldn't, would you? Why would you?
So now, what happened to Vivian? It's at this point that we introduce a man called William Henry Podmore. Now, Podmore was a bit of a bad bastard.
Oh.
He'd been in trouble with the police several times in his life so far. And let's go with he was known to the police. He was a known fraudster and was in fact, at the time of the murder/discovery time period, wanted in Manchester for fraud. So, how did Podmore come to know Vivian? He had answered an advert in the local paper, put there by Vivian, for an assistant salesman. And we can work out that there was some kind of lying, essentially, used at this point to say, oh, yeah, I'm a great oil salesman. Yeah, you just, employ me. I'm the best oil salesman you've ever met before.
Great.
Because there's no evidence of him being
an oil salesman.
Or a salesman of any variety.
Fab.
But
what year was this again?
1927. 1929, my apologies. We're at 1929. So 1929 was the discovery of the body. So previous to that, he'd been working for him. So around 1927-ish. So he'd managed to convince Vivian of his experience in the sales area, and either that or he just gave a crack in an interview. We'll kind of never know. But what we do know is he got the job, and he went about just being a fraudster again.
Fab.
There's evidence of him being a fraudster throughout his career as such with Vivian, which we'll get onto in a second. But obviously at this point, the police, having found a body and worked out that it was a man working with him, went to try and have a word with Podmore, who had also been known as William Thomas at this point. And I couldn't actually work out which was his actual name. Because he used both of them interchangeably.
They love doing that, don't they?
Yeah, it's a nice way of covering up your identity. Just use a different one.
Just keep changing it.
But don't change your first name.
Remember that one that you did where that guy had 20, 15 different names?
Yeah, but he again didn't change his first name.
Yeah, it was William, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah.
Classic.
Bad Bill.
Big Bill.
So they went to his rented lodgings to try and have a word with him to see if he knew anything about it, and they found evidence that he'd left in a hurry. But he hadn't managed to cover up his tracks leaving, and there was evidence of his previous crimes that he'd taken part in, including wage packets from a previous job where he had made off with these wages, not his, amounting to around about £130 in 1929.
Did you?
I did, which is about £8,000 these days.
Blimey.
Which, depending on what day you're listening to this, is either $8,000 or $10,000. We'll not go down the Brexit route, but
let's not talk about that.
It's about £8,000 sterling, which is a shit ton of money.
It's a shit ton of money.
And he just, apparently, from what I read, he took those wage packets and just pissed off.
Classic.
And just left them in the lurch. The police did eventually catch up with him, and not having evidence to pursue anything to do with the murder, they managed to jail him for 6 months for the thefts. During his time in jail, however, the police managed to make a bit of a breakthrough in the case. They've been working with a receipt book of Podmore's and managed to work out, using the impressions from previous receipts written in the book.
Did they do that thing where you get a pencil and you do the side, you put it on its side and colour in, and then it shows
probably
up when you've written something.
So,
but it's not in the book. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so you hold it up to the light to see that there's something there.
Yeah, and then you get a pencil and you go over it. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's
so
fun.
they managed to work out from this receipt book that he was basically frauding the oil company and Vivian out of money for sales recorded in the receipt book that had never actually taken place.
Mm-hmm.
So he was saying, I've made a sale at this much, and so they were obviously handing over the money for that, but that had never happened. So the police were using this as a compile of evidence. However, while in jail, Podmore wasn't very good at keeping his mouth closed. He managed to admit to a fellow inmate that he'd been stealing from the company and from Vivian. So on his release, he walked out of the jail and was arrested again whilst walking out of the jail and jailed for another 6 months for fraud. Because they still hadn't at this point managed to build up evidence to say...
for the murder.
Yeah. So he went back to jail, and in this time he started his usual round of boasting and told another inmate of the murder that he had committed.
Just shut your mouth.
Oh, no, just don't shut your mouth.
Well, no, yeah, good, but I know, but like, if you're a criminal, like, shut up. Why are you boasting all the time?
He was maybe a...
Billy Big Balls, that's why.
Yeah, he's trying to...
They're so proud of themselves.
I get that's my impression of it, is he was like, look at me, look what I've done, I've got away with this, I've only got 6 months for it.
What dick.
And they've never caught me for this murder, and blah, yeah, great. I mean, I'm sure it might have impressed people in the jail, but...
Surprised that they ratted on him, though.
I think...
Snitches get stitches.
Snitches get stitches, that's right. However, the fellow prisoner that he had told of the murder reported him.
Oh, okay.
So that snitch didn't get stitches.
Oh.
And because of that, about 14 months after the actual murder, so he's done 2 stints of 6 months at this point, and there was the interim period, the police decided that through the confession to another inmate and the fact that they had evidence that he was frauding the company, that he...
It's good motive, isn't it?
Yeah, so they had reason to suspect him as the murderer. So the police went on the suspicion that what had happened was that Vivian had kind of caught up with what was happening and decided to confront William Podmore, or go and look, that you can't be taking this money, you can't be doing this, that's not all right. And at that point, Podmore had gotten in a bit of a rage. They're in a garage, there's a hammer to hand, and he beats him to death. At that point, obviously, he then... Excuse me. At that point, he then obviously leaves him in the garage and locks it up and walks away.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I couldn't find is whether he continued to work...
For Wolf's Head.
For Wolf's Head, because what I find odd is that 9-week period, 8-week period.
Yeah, where was Billy? Not Billy, sorry.
Where was...
Vivian.
Like, obviously his landlord had reported him missing.
Yeah.
But the search stopped at the door, so obviously there was still some trade happening from the garage to not arouse...
So is that where they kept...
So yeah, sorry, the garage was like a storeroom as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not like your normal driving garage where you keep a car, like a proper like double garage with boxes of oil.
Yeah, so
and
presumably William's like still flogging oil out of there, or That's
what I'm thinking, is to not arrange
like arouse suspicion.
Yeah, with the company. Like, where's our head salesman for the area?
Oh, maybe he's just like, he's gone on hauls. He's on holiday. Oh no, because then like you're lying. And then you like look well suspicious, and they're like, no, he's dead in the garage.
No, so and literally just my conjecture on this is that he must have been continuing to sell because he stayed in the local area.
Yeah, but then surely like that just proves your guilt. If there's been a body in there for the 2 months, you're flogging oil out of there. And they're like, did you not notice that decomposing rat-ridden body over there? And he's like, oh no, I was just selling the oil. So
either way, the police had decided they'd built up enough of a case to have a case against them, and the public, as they do, got on side and made a big theory about this, like, there's the murder weapon and there's a hair on the end of it and it was definitely his hair and that's what's happened, and the only man that would have access to this garage and be able to lock it from the outside afterwards was Podmore, so it must be him. So there was this huge rammy that kept going on and on, but the testimony of the 2 prisoners that Podmore had spoken to in jail was their biggest piece of evidence when it came to trial. That and the receipt book to show that he was obviously doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So the police put forward this case, and he went to trial, and he was found guilty in 1930, in the April of 1930. Sorry, I can't talk. So he was found guilty at trial in April of 1930, the following year, and he was sentenced to hang. Now, I would like to say, nice, case closed.
Yeah, job done.
Job done. And excellent work on behalf of Scotland Yard, having a look at the receipt book, and great of these guys.
Seeing as you fell short at the garage last time, good that you continued now.
Wouldn't have been Scotland Yard at the garage the first time.
No, that's fair.
That'd be the local constabulary.
Still, but okay.
But I still find it quite open-ended. There was nothing I could find anywhere about reading that said that they found his fingerprints on the hammer.
Like that it was, like, irrefutably him.
So what they've gone on is a
kind of circumstance.
I don't know, because I'm trying not to use circumstantial evidence, because they had evidence that there was a crime being committed by him towards Vivian.
Yeah.
So that's tick A, that was definitely happening.
Yeah.
Is the confession to another prisoner enough grounds to work on?
I don't think so.
Well, apparently the court in 1930 thought so.
I don't think it is, because, like, sure, like, depends really. Because I think nowadays, if they were going to use that as evidence, it'd be like good side evidence. But surely, like, a good defense could just turn around and be like, well, he's a criminal as well, like, why should we believe him?
Well, yeah, and what they'd gone on was he'd admitted it.
But yeah, but not to them.
No, but
it's not a proper confession.
Well, they'd gone with an admission of guilt.
Yeah.
And like I say, the jury didn't take that long to find him guilty. They took under an hour and a half.
I don't know. I don't think it's that solid a case, really.
Well, he was hanged on the 22nd of April and walked 6 steps from his cell and was hung without...
6 steps?
Well, at that point, it wouldn't have been public hangings anymore.
I know, but 6 steps, that's just like across the corridor, huh?
Yeah. And apparently when he was hanged...
Now you're taking really long strides.
Yeah, maybe he jumped. Yeah, apparently when he hanged, he was completely nonplussed.
Oh, really?
By the whole situation.
Nonchalant?
Yeah, right, whatever.
Fuck it.
You've caught me.
Cool.
So I think he...
well, he probably did then, didn't he?
Oh, no, like, I'm not arguing whether he did it. I think he did do it, but I just find, like, the case is quite a weak one
to
hold against him. So
not a lot of evidence to, like, hang somebody, I think.
No, I don't think so. But
I wouldn't have liked to be around in the 30s.
But there you go, an American citizen hung on British soil in the 1930s.
There you go. Named Vivian.
Well, his mistake was confessing.
What was that, sorry?
His mistake was confessing.
Yeah.
If he hadn't done that, he might have gotten away with it.
I think you're absolutely right there. I think if he'd served his 6 months for fraud...
Yeah, and just shut up.
And it said nothing, he could have probably walked away from it.
That, or, like, found a more trustworthy prison pal to tell your secrets to. You know, don't go and tell Big Mouth.
Well, just don't tell
Gobshite
anyone.
over there. Yeah, true that.
I mean, I make that sound like I'm glad he was...
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, definitely.
Found guilty. But at the same time, that was entirely his own fault.
That was good.
There you go. And sorry, that feels a bit shorter than it was normally.
No, I think that was fine.
But I'm just actually quickly looking to see when the last American was hung in Britain.
Oh.
I think he might.
Was it William Podmore?
I think it might have been William Podmore.
Well, there you go.
So there you are. So yeah, that was my. They call it the Southampton garage murder.
You're good at you've done the last hanging in Stirling. That was Patreon, wasn't it?
That was Patreon, yes.
You've done last hanging in Stirling. Now you've done last American hung on British soil. And
if I'm wrong there, anybody please do correct me.
Yeah, you've done first time DNA fingerprinting and stuff. You've done lots of first and last. You're good at finding these cornerstone cases.
I think it's just the stuff that interests me.
Yeah, I know. It's good though. I like them.
I think it just kind of go I like that progression of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it wasn't that long after. That was 30 years after that.
I'm going to try and find a good one for you. Yeah, I'm going to find a first time that's something.
Okay. And what will happen is I'll do the same one that week by mistake.
Probably.
We'll just have to do the same story, both of us.
That would be embarrassing. It'll be like when you turn up and someone's wearing the same dress as you.
No,
One of us is going to have to go home.
Okay, now if Bob shows up and wearing the same dress as you,
Yeah, we'll wear the same dress, we'll do the same story. It'll just be so embarrassing.
That's why this isn't a video podcast, is because we keep turning up in the same dresses. Anyway, that was my Southampton garage murder case, which was like I say, it was just one that when I found it, I went, "Oh, that's a bit different."
Yeah, I like that.
And I like the logo for the Wolf's Head Oil Company.
We'll share that.
I'll share that as well. Kate, I hope you've enjoyed joining us this evening.
I have very much.
We've loved having you.
And thank you very much for being our first ever international co-host.
I know. Amazing.
Oh, you're welcome. Maybe you'll get some more.
You'll go down in Twisted History.
Twisted History.
Yes, that would be fitting. Twisted History.
which is the book that Nadine and I will never write.
Researching.
Well, do you know what? Maybe one day we'll just publish what we've researched anyway. But I mean, to be honest, what you hear when we're talking is absolutely not what it says in our notes. It's close. That's
It'll do.
Close. Yeah. Nope. That's probably what makes it work.
So yeah, like I say, thank you very much for joining us. Also, thank you very much for being one of our Patreons.
Oh, you're very welcome. I get pleasure out of listening to you and being part of making it happen.
If you have listened to this and want to join Kate in our lovely little band of people that help support Twisted Britain, please do look us up on Patreon. You'll find us just by searching Patreon Twisted Britain. All of our tiers receive a lovely wee badge.
I'd forgotten what we called all our tiers. They're actually quite funny. I looked at it the other day. They're quite funny.
I think I did them while drunk.
Yeah, we did them when we were drunk at the bar. It's quite good. Because I think, Kate, you're a bad bastard for being top tier.
You are.
Yes, that's it.
And that sounds really horrible saying it to you, but thank you.
Anytime.
And anybody who decides to join our Patreon will get access to all of our Patreon only episodes. There's one that goes out on the 15th of every month. They're a wee bit different than our normal episodes because they're just something fun that we look at. We've had some great feedback on Twitter about our Nursery Wines one recently.
Oh, really?
Apparently somebody's been going around telling all their friends about the Mary Mary Quite Contrary. Yeah.
Oh, fabulous. I've forgotten again.
It was guillotines.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But if you want to hear more about the history of Nursery Wines, join us on Patreon. We will also send you bits and bobs.
I also divulge heavily into my interest in supernatural and monsters and stuff. That's where I tend to let that out more.
We need to let you do it somewhere, I suppose, don't we?
Well, yeah, but I am going to take Emma and Vicky's advice and do more on the main episodes.
Please do, by all means.
Thanks.
If you have liked what you listen to, please do go on to whatever podcast app you use and give us a rating and a review. All of them, no matter how many stars they are, we love reading them. 5 stars is better than 4, just in case you're wondering.
Yeah, that's good maths. You're good at maths.
Told you. If you want to join us on the social medias, please do. We are on Twitter at
Twisted Britain.
We're on Facebook,
Twisted Britain.
And we're on Instagram,
Twisted Britain.
And if you'd like to join our ever-growing group of people on Facebook in our discussion group, it's Twisted Britain Discussion Group.
Yep, you can find us there.
I think we're just over 200 people on it now.
Yep.
So if you'd like to, that's the place where we'll talk as ourselves.
I know, I've just been linked to a very interesting looking story today. Can't wait to get home and read that.
So yeah, thank you. Also, if you have any cases that you'd like us to have a look at, please just send them across through any of the social medias. And Kate, same goes for you. If there's anything you want to ever have us have a look at,
yeah, let us know.
Chuck it our way.
And we said the same.
I will.
We've said the same to Emma and Vicky, but we think in a year's time we're going to revisit our Patreons that have done episodes with us this year and have some kind of Patreon party of some description. We're not sure what that means yet, but we're going to have one.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, we'll definitely do
something.
Sounds
great.
So I'd just like to say thank you very much, everybody, for listening this evening. And I'll leave you with a thank you, love you, bye.
Did you re-record?
I haven't.
Oh my god! You promised.
I did promise, but yeah, he's a toddler and he's tricky. Like, I need to staple him down and get this.
He has to stop shitting on the carpet first.
Oh, totally. We had this discussion before it started. So I'll leave you with a thank you, love you, bye.
Thank you, love you, bye.
Kate?
Thank you, love you, bye.
Thank you very much. We will see you all again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, bye.